Go Selwyn.
Sweet. How do you say go in Portuguese?
Vai Selwyn.
Vai?
Yeah, but that's kind of rude.
Is there a more like nicer way of saying?
Vamos lá, Selwyn.
Vamos lá.
Vamos lá.
Vamos lá.
Yeah, let's go.
Vamos lá. Vamos lá.
Oi, gente! Pra quem é novo por aqui, meu nome é Bianca e nesse canal eu dou as melhores dicas pra quem quer vir pra Nova Zelândia ou pra quem já mora aqui. E nos últimos anos, bastante gente virou residente aqui da Nova Zelândia, né, por conta de um programa pós-Covid que teve por aqui, bastante gente acabou ganhando a residência, o que significa que agora muita gente tem o direito de votar aqui na Nova Zelândia. Em breve a gente vai ter eleições nacionais por aqui, então eu achei que seria muito útil trazer um convidado que vocês adoram e que agora está trabalhando aqui na Electoral Commission da Nova Zelândia para explicar um pouquinho melhor pra gente como é que esse processo funciona por aqui. Selwyn, hello. So happy to have you back.
Thanks
you
for having
so
me.
much.
I've been missing you guys. So,
Yeah. Okay, so you have been working at the Electoral Commission now.
Yeah, basically. So, the Electoral Commission is what we would describe as an independent crown entity. So what that means is that, I'll flip this. I'll tell you what we're not. We're not government. We don't deal with legislation or making any laws in Nova Zelandia in New Zealand. But what we are is that we are politically neutral. And our sole purpose is to run the elections in this country, making sure that they're free, that they're fair, and most importantly, that they're accurate. So that's our commitment to the people of New Zealand.
Okay, so the first question I have for you is because the two political systems in New Zealand and in Brazil are quite different. So in Brazil we have a republic, that means we elect a president. Here you have a parliament. I know that means you have a prime minister, not a president. And I know they can also be changed in between governments, you know, so that's all a little bit confusing for us.
In New Zealand, we have a democratic system called MMP. So what that means is mixed member proportion. So that system of government actually came from Germany, and we adopted that. So we had a referendum in 1993 about whether we wanted to change our political system to MMP. We used to use the British style first past the post, where the political party that won, they won the two-horse race. But we found that New Zealand wanted to have something that was more representative of different voices in our parliament. So what MMP means is that you get two ticks. So you vote for a political party to represent you, and you vote for a candidate to represent you in your electorate. Now, what an electorate is your local area, where you live. And so that person that gets elected in your local area will represent you in Parliament, issues or concerns or things pertaining to that area.
So here, instead of voting for one person, so like in Brazil, we will elect a president who's part of a party. Here, instead, you will vote for the party, and then the party will select who the prime minister is. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
The person that will be the prime minister or the leader of the opposition, whichever one will be which after the elections, that is the leader of that party.
And then so when you're voting for those parties and those electorate people, what you're doing is you're giving them more seats in parliament, and therefore has more influence on the politics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
First of all, let's talk about how a party might actually get into parliament, because they still have to meet a threshold to be able to get into parliament. It's 5% as it currently stands, so you need 5% of the votes to be able to get into parliament.
But then what is it that you said about the electorate? So if
so because that person gets a seat because they won their electorate, so there's an electorate seat for them.
Okay, so those people, they don't need the 5% because they won their local election.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. Great.
So, in New Zealand, we have our general election every 3 years. So the last one that we had was in 2020. Something that's important to note is that we have local elections as well. That is not in the same year as our general elections. Something else that's important to know is that those elections aren't run by the Electoral Commission. Those are run by local councils and district boards and things like that. So local elections is for things, such as city councils, for regional councils. And so for local governments, that happens on the ground in those respective areas.
Got it. I think a common mistake for us is to think that when we're voting for our electorate, we're actually electing like a regional council person,
Yeah.
which is not the case. So when you're voting for your electorate in this general election, you're actually voting to put them in parliament.
Yeah, and national parliament.
So not as, even though it's a local thing,
Yeah.
it's not because they're going to represent you nationally.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. We often hear that the prime minister has changed. So that has nothing to do with a new election. That is just the party itself changing who the party leader is.
Yeah.
So they just get to do that whenever they feel like that's needed.
Yeah, that's at their discretion.
Okay.
The seats in Parliament of representation is proportionate to what the population of New Zealand votes for. Parties need to get more than 50% of the seats to be able to hold the power and become the government in Parliament. But because of the style of government that we have, it's not a two-horse race. And it's not often common that one party will get more than 50% of the seats. So coalitions have to be formed to be able to form a government.
Yeah.
And what that means is that there has to be some kind of power sharing between different parties.
Yeah.
So it means one party doesn't get all of the power.
Whoever has the most votes is the elected party. But then they have
Yeah.
to make coalitions.
Because it's not very common that they'll get more than 50% of the votes.
Okay.
Just because there is a lot of parties that are running, and those parties will also get some of the votes. They might actually be the tipping factor on which one's going to be the government.
Okay.
So that's what
Got
it means
it.
by MMP. Like, it's representative. So those people still get a representation in Parliament despite being maybe a smaller party. So let's talk a little bit about voting.
Yeah.
Voting begins on the 2nd of October and will be open right up until election day, which is on the 14th of October. So you have a decent amount of time to be able to go there and get your votes in.
Okay.
So what will happen is that at 7 p.m, the final votes will close, and then all of those voting places will count. And then the winning government, whoever that may be in the coalitions, and everybody will celebrate and everybody will cry.
Yeah.
You know, it's how it is, lots of emotions.
Yeah.
But what will happen is that they'll have 6 weeks to be able to form a government, because we'll need to actually form a government to start making laws and legislation.
So
again.
they don't actually win when the election is over.
Yeah, but they have a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Like, it pretty much is, but obviously we need to have that final tick and that final seal of approval to say this is the final number.
I love that you can vote, because in Brazil you can only vote, you have the one day to vote. Everyone has to go out on the same day and vote.
Yeah.
And I love that here you have a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I guess the thing is, it's like, it's that accessibility thing, right? And so it's making sure that, you know, it's giving people time, because people obviously have to work and they have to go to school and they have to go to university. So there's a lot of time that people have to give up to be able to cast a vote, right? We need to make sure that it's accessible for you guys to actually take part in our democracy. And not just take part in our democracy, but being willing and motivated to take part in our democracy.
Yeah, cool.
And so we need to make that accessible for people.
So who can vote in New Zealand? Because I didn't think that I could vote. I thought I needed to be a citizen.
Yeah.
I didn't think that just having a resident visa would allow me to vote. But apparently it does. And I'm going to do that this year. So
Whoop,
yay.
whoop. Let's go.
Yeah.
We love that. Partake in your democracy, people. That's what's up. You got to vote. You got to make it count.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good on you, Bianca.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, to do that, to be able to vote, you first need to enroll.
Okay.
So let's talk about enrollment. To be enrolled to vote in Nova Zelandia in New Zealand, you need to fulfill 3 requirements. These are ands, they're not ors. So you have to tick all of these to be able to do it. Okay, requirement 1, you have to be 18 years or over. Sweet. Requirement 2, you have to be a New Zealand citizen or a permanent resident. And requirement 3, you have to have lived in New Zealand for at least 1 year continuously at some point in your life. So if you've been here for 1 year and you're a baby at that time, congratulations, you've already ticked off one of them.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
You've already ticked off one of them.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about visas, because that's probably the one that maybe people aren't sure about.
Yeah.
For electoral purposes, you are considered a permanent resident if you do not have a return date where you have to go back to your home country by on your passport. Capiche?
Yeah. So if you have on your visa, if there is a return date on your visa that says you have to leave New Zealand by this date, you cannot vote.
Yeah. But if you don't, you can vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm going out to a voting place. What can I expect there? I'm going to get there. I'm going to talk to someone. Maybe give them my ID or something like that.
No, so you don't need to give your ID. That's
Yeah.
another thing, is that you don't need to bring your ID. You just need to come with a name and a home address.
Okay.
That's all you need to do.
But then can't someone pretend to be me?
This is what enrollment is for, because what will happen is that your enrollments go into something that is called the general roll, and that has everybody's details. And so we have that, and we cross everybody out to make sure that there's only one vote that's being casted by each person, right?
Okay.
So you'll rock up to a voting place. One of our friendly faces, might even be me,
Yeah.
we'll ask you for your name and your address, and we'll look for you, and we'll cross you off the list. You'll go up to a voting booth, and that's where you'll do your 2 ticks, and then you'll put the piece of paper in. Super simple, it's 2 ticks, but we also have many forms of help if you need it.
Yeah.
So you can actually ask us to do the ticks for you if you want to. You can actually bring a family member if you wanted to, if you're quite nervous about it, and get them to tick it. The only thing that they can't do is tell you who to vote for. That's the only thing that they can't do. But the biggest thing that I'll say, please, please, please listen, is that your voice matters. That's the biggest thing that you need to know, and it means something. You've grown up with a set of values, a specific perspective on the world, and you don't need to be a political scientist or have some kind of degree. By virtue of being alive, being here, being over 18, and meeting all the requirements, and having an opinion on the world, that is enough to be able to vote. We encourage you guys to get out there and vote, but you guys also have to spread the message, and there's a responsibility that you guys need to be able to go out there and make sure that this information is spread amongst your communities and those kinds of things, and making sure that you're helping people with this information as well, because we're all a team together, and that's something that's really important, is that message gets brought out there. Somewhere where you can enroll is at vote.nz, is where a lot of that information is, and that's also where you can find voting places that are near you, so you can actually use your address to find where the closest voting places are near you.
Does it need to be within my area? No.
You can go for a holiday in the North Island
and
you can vote there.
Oh, wow.
And you'll still be voting for back home.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
So you can vote from anywhere in the country. It doesn't matter where you are.
When are results announced?
We talked about those preliminary results,
Yeah.
and that will be the night of election night.
Yeah.
Friday the 3rd of November is when the official results are, when we'll have that final number from the second count.
Cool.
Yeah.
Friday the 3rd of November.
Yeah, Friday the 3rd of
Cool.
November. So
Awesome.
watch it. Watch the space. Watch it. Elections happening this year. Exciting place to be in. Get amongst it, First time voter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited.
That's an exciting
I'm gonna
thing.
vote in another country.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah.
That's cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
I would just like to thank you very much for being here. It's so helpful. People love it when you're here. So thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much.
And if there's any final messages that you would like to leave to the public.
Can you save a couch for me? Is that alright?
Yeah, so Selwyn wants to visit Brazil at some stage, and he needs a place to stay. I already offered him my house, but he needs other places in town.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, I was looking at different towns and cities in Brazil.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe I can visit there one day.
So many good places to visit.
I guess the biggest thing is that never let anybody tell you that your voice doesn't matter. Is probably the biggest thing. And this is one of the many ways of having your voice heard. And we live in a country where we want to hear your opinions. We're after your opinions. We're chasing after your opinions. So come, get enrolled. Just give it a go. We like to think of elections as New Zealand's biggest event every 3 years. We hire 20,000 people for this thing.
Let's make sure that whoever is representing us is representing New Zealand as it actually is, and not just a small, portion of it.
Exactly. Let's go. Yeah.
Thanks, Selwyn.
Oh man, I'm so added. Did you know that the ukulele was invented in Portugal and brought to Hawaii?
What? I didn't
It's a
know
Portuguese
that.
instrument. You didn't know that?
No.
They think of an ukulele and they're like, oh,
Yeah,
it's Hawaii.
Hawaiian.
No,
Yeah.
it came from Portugal.
Oh wow.
What?
Awesome. Yeah.